So here we are, Motorcycle Live, the national bike show in the UK. We're on the BMW Motorrad UK official stand with the PC.18, and we're finally getting around to doing our PC.18 walkthrough. Basically, this is part 2. We did the previous build diary and spoke a lot about the fabrication process and the design process and everything that we were going to do to the bike. Since then, we've finished it. We've taken it to some events. We've gone to Goodwood, went to the Festival of Speed. I was fortunate enough to ride it up the hill there.
Very lucky.
Very, very lucky. Top draw moment that was. And now we're here at the National Bike Show, and we finally found 5 minutes so we can actually talk you through all the stuff we did with the bike, and you can see what we were talking about in person. So we're going to sort of crack on with that, I guess.
Yes, we are, yeah.
I think that we should do like we did in the previous video, where we start at the front and we'll work our way back, and then we'll just give you an overview of what we found tricky, what came out maybe better than expected.
Yeah, definitely.
There,
there were a few surprises along the way, some challenges, but the main thing is the end product has blown us away, has been a real good marketing tool for us, and it's just genuinely a really good build.
Yeah.
Like, we're proud of it, BMW are proud of it, and I think that means more to us than anything else.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's have a look round, shall we?
So going down to the front wheel, the 719 option, 19-inch front, kindly shot out by Dunlop for us. Tyres gave us a bit of a headache, could you say? It was a small headache.
It was just a few considerations to be made. Due to the weight of the bike, we had to make sure that the right tyre was chosen to make sure that it was the safe tyre.
Yeah.
But also, we like to take into consideration the styling elements of the bike as well. Like, the bike is neo cafe / drag, so the tyres needed to look not heavily treaded. They need to look like they were a drag / sport tyre, and so yeah, I think we made the right choice. It fits the brief and they look great.
It would have been all too easy to have gone, let's go find something like a Firestone-y type thing,
Yeah,
like that. But that
exactly,
wasn't. It was going to be like an R18 type tyre, but it wasn't going to suit the brief and everything that we were doing with the bike. So we went for the Dunlops, we went for an Elite 4 on the back, and then we switched it up on the front and went for one of the Sport Smarts. So that obviously meant that gave us a point really where we could work from to get all the mudguards sorted. We went quite heavily in the previous video into fabricating these brackets up because we wanted to make them basically as hidden as possible. The standard R18 front mudguard comes as a single piece basically, and we wanted to make sure that we could do something that was much more slimline, much more slender, and something we could replicate again. And I think we've done everything we aim to achieve with this.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah, I can happily say that we nailed it. Most definitely. Just little details as well, like making sure that the calipers are correctly coated. So all the calipers, front, rear, and the master cylinders are all Cerakoted. So that is basically a heat-resistant paint. It's what needs to be done for that item, and luckily it's the same shade that picks up on the satin that's on the rest of the material of the mudguard, front and rear. So it keeps the continuity of the bike going. It's just one of those elements that come out great.
Talking about the brakes, moving on from where Stu's just mentioned those there, they were one of the things that gave us kind of a small headache as well. It's something to have to work around. Once we were putting the bike together, we put the new master cylinders, reservoirs, bars and everything on, and we realised that we were going to have a slight issue really with the length of the brake hoses on the OEM model.
Absolutely,
and so we had to have a bit of a oh shit get around moment, didn't we? Thankfully, it worked out pretty well.
Yeah, certainly. So we hooked up with Hale brake lines to build us some bespoke custom lines, which meant that we could consolidate all of the hydraulic hoses to behind the yokes and behind the forks, because due to the sort of characteristics and the architecture of the bike, we would have ended up with massive hoses that would have come out long and would have had to basically follow the sweeping line to the bike to keep it from getting massive air locks and just not being right.
Yeah.
However, Hal hooked us up with some custom built lines, and we utilised the distribution box that was already on the bike using the older the older master cylinders to get them into the right place. We got the master cylinders off of the post 17 Pure.
Pure, I think.
It was a Pure, yeah. So it's keeping it factory. That's what we like. We know that's what works.
So the reason that we've done the brake master cylinders differently on these, and the reason we've used the Pure R19 ones, partly because we were forced to. The R18 comes with some handlebars that are basically fat bars, 28mm all the way through, right to the end where it goes down to 22, but only at the control part. On the R19, they're fat in the middle and they taper to 22, whereas on the R18, they're basically fat all the way and then they just taper up to 22 right at the control. So in order to change a lot of the bits we wanted to put on there, in order to change the bars themselves, we basically had to think about outside the box, and we thought, well, what do we already know? We know the R19.
We know R19.
So
for sure.
we've basically transferred an R19 top end onto an R18 bottom end here, and you know, there have been some other bonuses from that. The fact that everything's black is obviously going to work with the build. The fact that we can then use the mirror delete sort of hack that we use in our other YouTube videos, everything just sort of came together real neatly and nicely, and it was one of those nice sort of homage parts of the stuff that we already know and could transform and transplant onto a new bike.
Okay, so last time you saw this bike in the workshop, there was no front end in it. We did mention at the time that we had the front end out of the bike because we were going to hook it up with some 719 option parts and remove the tins, which was getting rid of loads of weight and also completely didn't fit the brief of the bike. As you can see, we've got the 719 tube covers and the 719 top cap covers. They perfectly finish off the bike, give it the BMW stamp, and add another texture into the front end in the form of the anodizing. So moving on from that, the headlight. It's the Neo Cafe headlight, which is the PCC signature part that's on this front end. At the time, we didn't necessarily have the technology to get the bike, to get the light working as fully functional as we wanted it to, like it would out of the factory. We got the light working in the form that it had a dip beam on all the time, but it didn't actually have a functional flash function to it. We've hooked up with DevMoto, which we have done a lot this year, and we've finally got a fully functional headlight adapter that makes it work as it should do from the factory, turning it into now a fully functional road-going bike. The other elements that we've sort of given a little bit of PCC flair to was the yokes. The whole of the front end, including the yokes, was dismantled, so we could get the yokes painted in satin black, which would match the satin that's on the mudguard, just to keep that continuity flowing through the bike. It's another element of the bike that we took a lot of time to make sure that we got right, but we are so chuffed with the end product, and it just looks super slick.
So that brings us down to the next point, which is the huge pop of colour on the tank. So we wanted to use something that was an instantly recognisable type scroll design from like a classic sort of almost Harley-ish or, you know, sort of 60s cruiser type vibe. But we wanted to bring it into the modern sort of 21st century. So we went with a real bright, heavy pop of blue. We've put the sort of more subtle modern badges and stuff like that on there as well. For me, the part that worked best, and this was almost not unintentional, I'd say, but certainly the part that was like, it's only really when you put the tank on the bike and you're like, oh shit, yeah, that worked, was where this black line just feeds straight into the rest of the black of the frame. It just brings that line down beautifully. So we're extremely grateful to Valkyrie for doing that for us. They've done an incredible job on this. Do please check Valkyrie Paintworks out. Yeah. They do most of our builds we do. And then just adding all these subtle little touches like the air intake covers, putting the 719 parts on, so you've got the chest plate, you've got the cylinder head covers, you've got the BMW fuel cap, all that black just allows the blue to really sort of pop and hit you in the face when you see it. So I'm extremely pleased with how this come out. It's probably one of my favourite tank designs that we've done so far.
Absolutely, yeah. It's a beautiful colour, really, the jewel in the crown. For sure.
But not necessarily one that we're expecting to be that in love with.
No, and
like, we knew like it's going to work for the bike and it's going to fit the brief, but honestly, like the second, I can't remember if you brought this back or if they brought it down, but
they brought it down, yeah.
You open the cover, I'm just like, wow. Okay,
I would go as far to say that this is a colour that would only work on this bike. I don't see it working on an R90 in the same way. I don't think it would have the same impact because of the stance of the bike. And also the layout of the tank is a very old school, long and flat style tank that really sort of like works seamlessly with that colour. It's stunning. Really
absolutely. Valkyrie were also really good because what they then did is a few of the other black panels, or what would traditionally be a black panel on the bike, they put an ever so small amount of blue into it as well. Yeah. So if you see it in certain lights, you'll get a certain hue of blueness in there. So on the side covers, that's worked really well because they've done that, but then they've also painted our Pier City logo within the R18 covers too, and they've gone gloss black with that, and it allows the gloss black to pop on an almost black surface, which is a really clever touch because you've almost got dark on dark and yet you can see everything perfectly. It's so clever.
Under these lights here as well, they don't hold back, and it's almost like a little bit of a daylight light here, and you can see the subtle blue that's in the black, and it is an element of this blue with the metallic in the black, and it's very, very, very subtle, but they're all about the small details, which is what we're about, and it's why we use them. It's the people you surround yourself with that end up with the product being as good as it is. So it's fantastic.
Speaking of which, the seat.
The seat, absolutely.
And that ties in, that flows from the paint and the tank and everything else. And you know, I'll let you go into what James did with the seat, because that's, again, it's one of those bits where it might just look like a seat if you're sort of stood across the room, and then you get into the detail and you think, oh wait a minute, and there's a lot more there than actually meets the eye.
Yeah, exactly. This is one of those situations where, once again, it's the people you work with. Drew Irvine done a fantastic job of picking up all the details on the bike, and the seat has been one of those things. And I can now say our in-house upholsterer, James from JKA, he done a fantastic job at the seat. And you know, obviously you're going to say fantastic job, but literally he did. He refused to cover the seat and make the cover up until the tank came back from paint, because he wanted to make sure that the lines that flowed off of the tank flowed equally into where the suede and then the leather would start. And it's just details like that that we're like, we have so much time for that. He's knocked it out of the park. He's even surprised us with a PCC stamp on the back.
Yep.
Yeah, I can't say any more than like, check the seat out. It's just incredible.
And the fact that we're singing praises about James's seat and the Valkyrie tank is also a little bit testament to what we were trying to make sure would happen in the first case, which is some of the fabricated parts like the seat pan and some of those bits disappeared into the bike. We mentioned before in the previous video, you only really want maybe 4 or 5 things on a bike to really pop and really sing. If you try too hard to say every single part of this bike needs to be the thing that catches your eye, nothing really catches your eye. And in being as subtle as we could with the seat pan and hiding the indicator stuff, you can look at this bike and go, wow, that tank's cool. Wow, that seat really works with it. And that's, you know, it's another sort of like testament to the process and the way that we plan for these things to go.
It's going back to the seat as well. Like, we very, very quickly nearly overcomplicated the seat and made a bigger feature of it than what it needed to be.
Definitely.
Like, we were talking about doing some blue stitching, doing maybe pleated or quilted. We always wanted the 2 different materials on there, so the suede and the leather, to basically represent the gloss and the satin theme that we had running through the bike. But James, being as good as he is, he's like, look guys, hold fire with that. Let's get some samples run. He knocked up some samples of the suede and the leather with the blue stitch. And I'm so glad he did, because it looked garish. It didn't look right. And it really turned the seat into a bigger element of the bike, as silly as that sounds, and what it needed to be. The jewel in the crown was the tank, and that's where the blue is, and it's nowhere else.
Yeah.
So it's elements like that that's kept it simple and really kept the eye where it needs to be. But it's like a little Easter egg hunt. You go around the bike, and even now, as silly as it sounds, we haven't seen this bike for like 4 months.
4 or 5 months.
And I'm walking around going, oh, forgot about we did that. That's cool. That's nice.
Yeah.
That's a nice touch.
Yeah.
I just spent 3 minutes staring at the back of the mudguard.
Let's go.
Because we love it. But let's talk about the mudguard.
Tell me about the mudguard.
So, the rear end of the bike, carrying on from the seat, the rear end and the mudguard was the hardest part of this, basically the build, to really nail. I won't go into too much detail in regards to the fabrication side of it. You're going to have to check out episode 1 for that, because I went into a lot of detail with the asymmetric rear end of the bike. But making sure that everything was proportional, and more importantly, making sure that it was factory, like it was a factory-based product, and making sure that these parts on the bike look like they're a factory accessory. I can't say any more than that, really. It was just a challenge, making sure that it was all in the right place, and the lights being one of those things. Like, we wanted to tuck the lights in as much as we could and make them disappear, but at the same time, you don't want to make a light disappear that you need someone behind you to see. I'm just so chuffed with it, really. It's a little bit hard to talk about it when you're a little bit like, it's fantastic. I'm really happy with how it turns out.
You can say you're happy how it turned out, man. That's absolutely fine. Like, you know, this was something we had. I'll put out the headaches of, basically, because too many other people have strutted it, and that, you know, that's fine, that's going to work, but it's kind of a heritage touch, and we obviously wanted to get away from that, and to be able to do what you've done, to get to that point where it does look like it's floating. Let's not forget that this bike has now done some mileage since we built it as well, and that's where the shakedown test can be a crucial part. I'm sure if Neil had taken this to the Malay Mile, or if I'd been going up the hill at Goodwood and something had gone wrong, if something had fallen off, if we hadn't done things the way that we did things, we'd have had Neil on the blower and said, guys, something needs fixing. So over-engineering almost, the rear mudguard has been testament to the fact that we build these bikes to be used and not just to be shown. You know, that's crucial for us. It's all well and good making something nice, but if you can't then ride it at 80 miles an hour down a drag strip, whatever you're going to be doing with it, it's kind of pointless. It's just an ornament.
What's the point of building a bike that's going to sit on a trailer? This tyre's done burnouts. Okay, maybe not when you did it, because Neil didn't put any fuel in the tank.
Wow, I was going to get onto that, but there we go.
There has been burnouts that have been had. Now, that's a really nice segue onto the mileage, just to remind Amy Shaw that she owes us some end cans. because she
scrapey.
gave you some scrapey scrape. But no, I'm going to use that as a segue to say this is stuff that we've learned. This is stuff that we've learned from when we did it to what we know now. Wilbers now do a shock for these, and they do a plus 20 option for that shock. The plus 20 option on this bike with those underslung pipes will give you more ground clearance.
Yeah.
Ultimately, you know, there is an option to change up the wheels to go with the 21/18. We've got the 19 up front and the 16 on the rear, but we weren't going to compromise. Like what Rory said, it's built to ride, and the exhausts are there to be functional, fun, and be what is an integral part of the bike. However, that plus 20 rear shock would have given that a little bit more, and maybe Amy Shaw wouldn't owe us some end cans, but it was okay.
But you know, this is part of the R&D that we're putting together here as well. Obviously, we've completely bespoke the system in there. It's perfect for what we designed it for. We wanted the bike to look short and squat, and really, it's only when people start hanging out, I guess, that's going to happen.
Yeah.
Now that we know 6 months later that there are more parts in development for this, and parts are coming out all the time, so do check the website if you've got one, or if you look when we first said there's R18 parts loaded, guys, head back. There's always something new developing, especially for such a brand new bike like this.
Yeah, get on our email subscription. Like, we're very, very hot at keeping things updated, and 2022, as silly as it sounds, is going to be the year of the R18. There's lots of elements of this bike that are now going to be parts. If you love the exhaust, it will be available.
Absolutely, and pop down to your local dealerships as well.
Correct,
There are going to be much heavier sort of push on the customising side of things, even within the dealer network. So go down there, see what they've done, talk to them about picking a model up, get them to do a couple of the changes you can get out of the book maybe, then talk to us and we can do the rest and turn you into one of these as well.
That's, I think that's a nice way of us sort of like wrapping it up and pretty much saying there are some elements still to be done to this. Like, this was ready to go for Goodwood, ready for burnouts, ready to be taken up and down the hill. However, we now know where we are with the headlight. We've got some changes to make to that thanks to Dev Moto, and we got a side mount number plate that we didn't quite get done in time. We wanted to get it ready for the show, but it wasn't a priority. We needed to make sure the bike was fully functional and ready to go for the show. However, it's now going to be back with us as of the 17th of December, I believe.
In a few weeks.
So we're going to get the side mount number plate ready to go, and hopefully on the web shop, tested, and yeah, keep basically developing parts. And like I said, 2022 is going to be the year of the R18.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the BMW Live Action. We're here